Chapter 7 Captain Cook Builds a Nest. Very reluctantly, Janey and Bill had to leave Captain Cook and go to school. Mrs. Popper was busy in the kitchen, rather belatedly doing the breakfast dishes, and while she dimly realized that the penguin was going in and out the refrigerator pretty frequently, she thought nothing of it at first. Meanwhile, Mr. Popper had abandoned his telephoning and was now busy shaving and making himself neat in honor of being the owner of such a splendid bird as Captain Cook. But the penguin, though thus neglected for the moment, was by no means idle. With the unusual excitement and having to go to market earlier than usual, Mrs. Popper had not yet got around to straightening the house. She was an excellent housekeeper. Still, with two children like Janey and Bill, and a husband with such untidy ways, there was no denying the fact that she had to pick up the place rather frequently. Captain Cook was now attending to the picking up. Into the corners of every room he prowled and poked and pecked with a busy thoroughness. Into every closet he stared with his white circled eyes. Under and behind all the furniture, he crowded his plump figure with little subdued cries of curiosity, surprise, and pleasure. And each time he found what he seemed to be looking for, he picked it up in the black end of his red beak and carried it, waddling proudly on his wide pink feet, into the kitchen and into the ice box. At last it occurred to Mrs. Popper what on earth the busy bird was up to. When she looked, she could only scream to Mr. Popper to come quickly and see what Captain Cook had done now. Mr. Popper, himself looking rather remarkable, as Mrs. Popper noticed later, joined her in staring with astonishment into the refrigerator. Captain Cook came up too and helped them look. "Ork, ork," he said with triumph. Mrs. Popper laughed, and Mr. Popper gasped as they saw the results of Captain Cook's trips through the house. 2 spools of thread, 1 white chess bishop, and 6 parts of a jigsaw puzzle, a teaspoon, and a closed box of safety matches, a radish, 2 pennies, a nickel, and a golf ball, 2 pencil stubs, 1 bent playing card, and a small ashtray, 5 hairpins, an olive, 2 dominoes, and a sock, a nail file, 4 buttons of various sizes, a telephone slug, 7 marbles, and a tiny doll's chair, 5 checker pieces, a bit of graham cracker, a Parcheesi cup and an eraser, a door key, a button hook, and a crumpled piece of tinfoil, half of a very old lemon, the head of a china doll, Mr. Popper's pipe, and a ginger ale cap, an ink bottle cork, 2 screws, and a belt buckle, 6 beads from a child's necklace, 5 building blocks, a darning egg, a bone, a small harmonica, and a partly consumed lollipop, 2 toothpaste lids, and a small red notebook. "I guess this is what you call the rookery," said Mr. Popper, "only he couldn't find any stones to build his nest with." "Well," said Mrs. Popper, "those penguins may have heathen ways at the South Pole, but I declare I think this one is going to be quite a help around the house." "Ork!" said Captain Cook, and strutting into the living room, he knocked over the best lamp. "I think, Papa," said Mrs. Popper, "that you had better take Captain Cook outside for a little exercise. Good gracious, but you're all dressed up. Why, you look almost like a penguin yourself." Mr. Popper had smoothed down his hair and shaved off his whiskers. Never again would Mrs. Popper have to reproach him for looking as wild as a lion. He had put on a white shirt with a white tie, and white flannel trousers, and a pair of bright tan oxblood shoes. He had got out of the cedar chest his old black evening tailcoat that he had been married in, and brushed it carefully and put it on too. He did indeed look a little like a penguin. He turned and strutted like one now for Mrs. Popper. But he did not forget his duty to Captain Cook. "Can I have a few yards of clothesline, please, mamma?" asked Mr. Popper.